check, and things, the RBCs themselves are not producing to trigger the NK cells to bind to اللي هو stress signals. تفضل. Two or three things that happen together at the same time. The RBC not producing danger or stress signals, so the NK cells are not triggered, يعني مثل ما حكت normal cells. And at the same time, it is producing other types of receptors اللي هم don't eat me signals مثل ما حكت زميلتي لكم. So the NK cells won't bind to it. طيب اليوم we will discuss the TCR as I promised I'm going to show you some images وبعدين we'll start the topic. زي ما حكينا before there is a normal, proportionate, innate, adaptive immune response that normally takes place. If we end up with a lacking innate immune response, and the scenario if we end up with a lacking of an adaptive immune response, compare this to the normal response in terms of the duration of the infection and the number of microorganisms. We've discussed this before, and what we decided, which one is worse? Which one is worse in terms of number of microorganisms lacking the innate immune responses? طيب. So let us flip through these slides quickly before we start. هاي non-specificity والBAMs والDAMs. Okay. And the role of the cytokines. I believe we've discussed this before. Delayed, specific with a sterilizing immune response and memory event. 1, 2, and 17 for the intra, the extracellular. هاي شفتوها وهاي شفتوها. And the question was, then why do we get sick? إذا عندنا robust immune system مش هيك, then why do we get sick? ليش بنمرض؟ مش هيك? So the answer spans from the infection to the immune response, and the context of the infection determines the immune response and determines the host immune evasion strategies that are employed by the microbe and the interaction between the two. Check. هاي الفيجر is outdated. You agree or disagree? لأنه إحنا more or less we all have adapted modern more sedentary lifestyle مش هيك؟ حتى بالأردن we see more إيش؟ non-communicable diseases مش هيك؟ cardiovascular, obesity, hypertension مش هيك؟ in terms of reason for death. تمام. emerging, re-emerging infections. اللي أنا بدي أفرجيكم إياه. You have the regional lymph node with the T cell surveillance, collaborative work between the T cells and the antigen presenting cells. At the site of the infection, you have a dendritic cell of phagocytosed and identified and processed some epitopes that belongs to that antigen. And then it presents this to the regional lymph nodes, and that's where the antigen, antibody specificity, and clonal and somatic hypermutation takes place. The T cell also comes in place and binds to this, and it can also further activate the B cells as well, and at the same time, نفس T cell goes back and activate other T cells in the bloodstream. هاي مشكلة immune system إنه شوي complicated because many things occur at the same time simultaneously, and then the pathogen reactivated antibody, and then the T cell also goes and interact with the infection. Okay? So the antigen being presented to the ABCs, then the antigen is being presented to a T cell. So the T cell binds to the antigen, and it also, after it activates those in the bloodstream, and this is also binds to the antigen directly, and this is direct and indirect attack on antigens. تمام. على T cell receptor هلا رح نيجي محاضرة كاملة عليه، بس in principle there's the variable and the constant region, the alpha and the beta chain span through the transmembrane region into the cytoplasmic tail. And you can see at the tip here the antigen binding site. تمام. بس افهموا انه direct and indirect the involvement. وفي شيء اسمه CD3. ها؟ نعم. CD3 مثل ما حكى باسم specificity for the T cell response is dictated by the TCR binding. فمثله مثل أي شيء بالchemistry بالbiochemistry, this bindings has to be convincing to arrive to a threshold. Without يعني TCR binding alone is not enough. هيك هاي الخلاصة. Okay? So what else we need? We need a subsequent signaling for activating the dedicated family of proteins that forms the CD3 complex. But this is the complete picture. This is with a CD3. طيب. So it's a co-stimulatory and plays a role in stabilizing that biochemical reaction. So this is the two roles for the CD3. زي ما بتعرفوا CD4s, inflammatory, C1+C2 and T helpers, defense against extra, whereas CD8s, CTLs, and prominently against infected cells and tumor cells and transplanted cells. إذا الترانسبلانت مش معمول له تايبينج مظبوط. ثايمس راح تاخذوها I hope at some point مش هيك؟ ولا أخذتوا الثايمس؟ أخذتوها؟ Positive and negative selection in which the naive T cells learn and become committed. See, this is a naive T cell. Expresses both CD4 and CD8. Check. وبصير positive or negative selection, and then it's becoming what? Committed CD4s and committed CD8s. Another name for it is restricted. Class 1 restricted, class 2 restricted. والدور تبعها, what's the role for that? طيب. So this is the ABC على CD4 T cell. Okay. والميورين تبعه. طيب. This is the various. تتذكر قلنا البايندينج والكوستيميلاتري وشو الثيرد اللي حكيت عنه؟ These. The chemokine, the various chemokine and cytokines that further augment the inflammatory signal to convince the immune response to provide a robust, balanced immune response. طيب. CD4s, T helpers, TH2s, enhances the B cell activation via linked recognition زي الكرتون اللي فرجتكم اياه اول مره. وبعدين بتعطينا the inflammatories اللي هم TH1 و TH17s. هدول شو بيعملوا؟ They further enhance the innate immune response via inflammation, via chemokines and cytokines. فenhances the B cell activation. بيعطينا ايش؟ A specific clearing, sterilizing antibody production and memory formation للextracellular. Yep. حلو. processing extracellular pathogens في endogenous والexogenous pathways. I'm not gonna dwell too much عليه والacidification و chopping down لأنه ما it didn't come through the slides. ما فيش داعي نعطيكم شغلات زيادة. خليكم باللي معكم أحسن. طيب. So this is, what is this? Class 1 ولا class 2? Class 2. تمام. And we agree that is being expressed only by, وقلنا لازم انتوا تطلعوا table the differences between class 1 and class 2. Okay? Okay. طيب, CTLs, the other side of the cell-mediated immunity, CMI, cell-mediated immunity, who is CTL? Cytotoxic T cells. Show define or defense against true intracellular pathogen or abnormality. When the cell is being abnormal, مثل ايش؟ metaplastic changes. تمام؟ اللي هو يعني undergoing metaplastic changes. Tumor صح يا باسم بس benign or malignant من the beginning. It's good to have CTL. Okay. حتى في ناس بقول لك it's good to have a flu. Clears up your body. طيب intracellular because the viruses often hijacks your host replicative machinery to replicate. وبعدين the products will be presented على endoplasmic reticulum and thereby recognized by the host cells, pathogen residues, and the challenge is the immune system must distinguish between infected and uninfected cells, and this is the role of the activation of the CTLs, destructive force in the rejection process, وبرضه الترانسبلازم حكينا وعليه against the class 1 MHC differences. Directly lyse a grafted cell as well, releasing various toxins and chemokines factors. تمام؟ يعني as if the cell once it's virally infected or becoming abnormal, it takes off its badge. MHC class 1. طيب حكينا عن هذول امبارح. Let us type heavy chain with alpha 1, 2, 3, the binding على alpha 1 and 2, and then the transmembrane segments. This is the three external domains اللي احنا بنعرفهم لكلاس 1 MHC زي ما حكينا امبارح. Cytoplasmic segment and the beta 2 microglobulin or peptide binding sites. Well, this is the molecular structure, exactly what we've discussed yesterday. Well, the question اللي راح I've seen on the USMLE, and you probably will for those who are interested, is the difference between the two. So I encourage you, and I think في table I can share with you على differences. ومشان ما تنسوش class 1 لأن هذول الحيوانات they tend to be solo animals they're not in packs. You don't find them in nature in packs. فهم واحد لحاله, one, class 1. So you can hopefully remember looking at this ايش شو اسمه هذا الحيوان موس صح موس اوكي قديش بقطع هذا كم من كيلو برايكم صح يعني تقريبا بحجم الجمل اوكي بس سبحان الله the similarity in terms just so you remember the beta 2 microglobulin for the MHC class 1 فهاي اللي I promised to show you and here you go. في تيبل ولا ما فيش تيبل؟ طيب هذا الحكي polygenicity polymorphism we've discussed هاي table. I am sure any reference, any database you can find a decent reference in which you can compare between the two, the molecular structure, the function, the presentation, the binding, وهكذا. تمام؟ تمام. شو كمان بدي أفرجيكم؟ فاكس P3 positive T regs. خلينا نفرجيكم T regs ونخلص ونرجع على المحاضرة. T regs. هلا احنا قلنا TH1 و TH17s They're inflammatory cells. تمام? They're inflammatory cells. Their job is to further augment innate immune responses by producing and putting out a lot of chemokines and cytokines. طيب إذا إحنا الإميون تبعنا الإميون response تبعنا is balanced, it is robust, yet it is balanced, and it is enough. Okay? Then you would need some components of this immune system to kick in place to counteract and to dampen the immune responses when appropriate, when the antibodies have been formed and the infection is almost being neutralized, to minimize الhost tissue damage الكولاترال يعني الكولاترال. تمام؟ فالتيركس binds similarly to the antigen presenting cells, and they do bind through similar mechanism. Okay, it'll be B7 with CD8 for Th1 and Th17 for stabilization, B7 with CTLA4 in the case of Treg, and it is a CD25 positive. and بالفلو سايتومتري المتعارف عليه احنا بنحكي فوكس بي 3 positive cells، بنعرف انه بيحكي ايش التيرك. كيف بتعمل السبريشن؟ once it establishes the binding it produces IL-410 and TGF-beta. دائما بالإيمينولوجي once you hear TGF-beta اعرف انه ايش produces and then it suppresses the Th1 Th17 responses. Well, that's the story. Okay? So the question, why determine whether? Yes. The answer is CD4s, 1, 17, and 2s. And the cytokine environment, this is the answer. The cytokine environment not only involved in initiating, but it's also maintaining and shaping the immune response to favor which subset of cells would be primarily involved in the response. So it's good to have that knowledge. It's good to have that depth of knowledge at a medical student level. بصراحة ممتاز. تمام؟ في شيء ثاني؟ يلا هاي آخر سلايد وخلص. So the nature of the microbial infection. And the nature we mean by here is whether or not it's intra or extracellular infection. Dictates the antigen processing pathway. Antigen processing pathway. Whether it's endogenous or exogenous antigen processing pathway. And this dictates the presentation molecules, whether it is what? MSC class 1 or MSC class 2. مش كده؟ كده. And this dictates the effector T cell activation, whether it's CTL or Th1 cells versus Th2s. تمام؟ وشو بصير at the end? If the pathogen is destroyed, well, that's the end of what I wanted to show you extras. يعني على جنب هيك. فاليوم